Caroline, I watched this and I think sometimes we have to remember that the best athletes in the world have a hard time relating to other people that aren't some of the best athletes in the world because they didn't do it the same way. And I hear Tom say this, and that's fine, but Tom is a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders at this point, and according to multiple reports, has a huge say in at least how that roster is going to be constructed. He disputes some of that, but it sounds like he is a huge part of their process. I hate the concept of looking at a player and deciding that the way they celebrate becomes a reason that they would be taken off your board. It speaks to the way Tom did it, which works for Tom, but there's a million ways to peel an apple, and they're all right if you end up with the apple peeled at the end of the day. It feels strange, and it's a reminder that Tom lives in a bubble that's wildly different than most people to me.
Yeah, and I will play devil's advocate here that when you're an owner and a general manager and your livelihood, the future of your employment depends on the success of a 22-year-old, you do have to nitpick every single thing they do, whether it's right or wrong. It does feel incredibly crazy and incredibly weird, but I was told by someone that a quarterback that was a very highly rated quarterback coming out of college just a couple of years ago, that he was taken completely off of one team's board because that player took a bag of chips off of the bowl that was laying on the table in the interview room without asking. They said, we don't want our quarterback to be disrespectful like that. Like, that sounds so wildly crazy to me that he just didn't, he was laying out. He didn't ask for it. He just took it. And they said, nope, that's not our guy. So when your livelihood and your future is essentially placed in the success or the not success of some of these players, you have to nitpick everything. You have to ask their childhood hairdresser and their neighbor's housekeeper's pool boy's sister's dog keeper about how respectful a person this guy is, because you have to make sure that there's not a single stone that goes unturned. I do wonder though, because there was a sit down that Tom Brady did not so long ago, where it felt like he was sending out a very not so subliminal call out to Joe Burrow, because he was talking about, as a quarterback, it's your job to do your own walkthroughs and to take the pay cuts. And, if your defense is bad, if your defense is holding you back, that is your job as a quarterback to fix that. Felt like it was a call out to Joe Burrow. I do wonder here if he is thinking of any player in particular, whether it's a player that he's scouting now in college football, whether it's a quarterback that he may have passed on in this past year's draft as he's advising all of the Raiders brass. I do wonder if there is a player in particular here, but it does sound crazy. It does sound way too picky. It does sound like an old man yelling on his lawn, but isn't that kind of what owners and GMs have to do when evaluating players?
To a certain extent, but I also think that's part of why draft evaluation oftentimes goes so awry. Frankly, the tape is the tape. And if you believe somebody can play, you can believe somebody can play. Now, 20 years ago, I think you really had to worry about, well, how will success and money change this player? But now you have a modern college football athlete that's coming out. As you mentioned earlier, Bryce Underwood is getting paid a ton of money. By the time he eventually tries to make it in the NFL, should he have that opportunity, he will already have tens of millions of dollars in the bank. So even how does money change an athlete is something that there's now proof of concept for. Part of the reason I think the draft process becomes so wildly inexact is people start assigning so many personal things to the tape that they see, and then it suddenly changes the way you see it. Now, yes, you want to take a look, and as Mike Golick Jr. told me years ago when he was prepping for the draft process, his draft prep coach told him, when they ask you what you love other than football, your answer has to be nothing, because you don't want to give them a single inkling of a doubt that you're only about football. Like, stuff like that is stupid and it's real, but it shouldn't be. I mean, there's a reason Michael Jordan was never a great owner in the NBA, right? Like, sometimes when you're Tom Brady, nobody else is going to be Tom Brady. Like, when he talks about the walkthroughs he would lead teams to, or like, look at that very example. He talked about the fact that he got the players together. He did a walkthrough. He threw out the game plan and said, here's what we're doing. Okay. If a young quarterback in today's NFL did the exact same thing, threw out the game plan, did his own walkthrough without the coaches, and implemented a new game plan, we would be sitting here saying that's a reason that player went outside the box and isn't somebody you can trust. So, like, it's lose-lose. If a quarterback can play, a quarterback can play. And holding them to the standard of Tom Brady is just, It's the reason that no other coach can ever be Belichick, even when they got out of the Belichick tree, because you aren't Bill. Nobody else is going to be Tom. And I think Tom has to realize at some point that he's just different. And the way he did it worked for him. But that doesn't mean that it had to work the same for Peyton Manning. That doesn't mean that Joe Montana had to be the same. That doesn't mean that Terry Bradshaw had to be the same. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean Patrick Mahomes has to be the same. Mahomes is not TB12ing his way through success. And it seems to be pretty good for him. So I don't want Tom Brady to take a Mahomes off the board because he doesn't like the way the guy celebrates. I want him to evaluate the thing that he's more capable than anybody of evaluating: simple quarterback play.
Yeah, and it's fair to ask, like, can Tom Brady relate to young quarterbacks now? It's a different NFL. It's a different college football. That in college, you are a certified celebrity. I don't know if, like, you just brought up Bryce Underwood at Michigan. I don't know if Bryce Underwood can just go out to eat like a normal kid, like a normal college student, because they are certified celebrities. I also think it's fair to ask, like, can Tom Brady relate to anyone? Because Tom Brady's process is just so different, to the point that Tom Brady wouldn't eat strawberries because he thought the sugar content was too high, and then blah, 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 all this stuff, the TB12 method. So I've always said, I don't think Tom Brady would be a very good quarterback coach or a very good football coach, because Tom Brady just sees things and processes things differently. That the way that he might coach, that he might get frustrated and say, well, why can't you understand this? Why doesn't this come naturally to you? And it's because things come naturally to Tom Brady that don't come naturally to especially the everyday person, much less the everyday player. Maybe there is a translation to Tom Brady's ownership in being the same way. Was Tom Brady's process, Tom Brady's approach to the game, so on a different level than any other player that there's just not going to be a single player that he evaluates that lives up to his standard?
There is an element for me when you think about the quarterback position. How many great quarterbacks have turned out to have a tree of great quarterbacks that they discovered, right? Like John Elway certainly brought in Peyton Manning, which was great. He brought in a vet that could play, but John Elway didn't go out there and draft the quarterback of the future for the Denver Broncos. It took Sean Payton coming in to do what looks like that answer is. If it was simple as I'm going to hire a great quarterback to find a great quarterback, then teams would be paying Peyton Manning $100 million to come in and just find a quarterback. The way that Brady has approached the game makes him one of the best of all time. And that's incredible. And I'm not reducing that in any way, shape, or form. The problem is you cannot expect that is your method works for everybody in this process. And it concerns me that he's now being looked at as that person for an organization. Like, hey, the Raiders are putting their hope in Tom Brady's ability to evaluate. How many times have we heard smart people say, hey, if Brady's speaking on quarterbacks, then we trust. And that's fine. You should. Obviously, his resume gives you every reason to trust that. But if you start hearing that there are lines in the sand, like if Michael Jordan only wanted to draft people that had the same whatever athleticism that Michael Jordan had, he would never be able to draft anybody. So I understand that these are all caveats for Brady in the way that he goes through his decision-making process. But to me, how you celebrate a touchdown, that can be one small component of something, but also, how are you with the guys when they just need somebody to talk to at the facility? Like, shouldn't that also matter? Like, do you even know the guys' names? Like, I talked to people that played with Dan Marino during the peak of Dan Marino that joked about the fact that they were on his team for 3 years. He never knew their name. So I just think that there are so many elements to how we evaluate. That's the most difficult part of it.